Great. Well, the two presentations that we have today in some ways might kind of go together. And I'll start by just telling you the motto of both Little Sisters and Brothers of the Lamb, which is, "Wounded, I will not cease to love." And the truth is that many of us come here and we talk about the successes that we've had as parents, the successes we've had as families. We have a beautiful ideal that we strive towards. But one of the things that we don't maybe often enough talk about because we're afraid or ashamed is our wounds. And the discovery of what a wound means and its possibility for bringing healing into the world is maybe one of the things that, at least in my life, I've needed to learn. There's a line from this song by Ruth Haynes at the very end. It's called Home from Home. There's a line at the end. It's a song about discovering one's home from home, discovering a sunrise of a new life. And the discovery that it's been a long time since the beat of my heart was a friend. It's been a long time since I felt I was breathing again. It's an experience of healing, and you could say of recovery of self. And the very last line of the song is, "I guess it's funny, this twofold irony, my greatest victory through my own defeat." And so it's with so much joy that I get to introduce now Angie and Michael Hummer, Kevin Hummer. That was a Freudian slip. I was thinking of Michael Hummer, their son, who's a wife. I know them. So I know Kevin and Angie through their son Michael and his wife Cecilia. Anyway, they are a beautiful family, and Kevin and Angie have a beautiful story, a story of healing, and a story that I know to be fruitful for all of us to listen to. So without further ado, they're going to each give a 15-minute version, talk about their story. And then after that, we're going to open it up to questions. I'm going to have a couple to start us off. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me? Is it on? Not on. How about now? Not really. Okay. I bet this will do it. Okay. How's that? Better? Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name's Angie, and it's a great opportunity to be here today. I am here to share with you my experience, strength, and hope for the last, we'll just go ahead and say 60 years, and how life is just amazing now with the work that I've done. And honestly, the way I'm thinking about this is, I'm down here and you're up there, and one of the things that I believe in is that one of the ways up is down. So I'm down here today. So anyway, I would like to start with a prayer. It's called the set-aside prayer. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, the good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defective character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your will. Okay, so what I'd like to share with you today is 5 of my bottom in my life, 5 tools that I've learned in my life through recovery, and then some miracles that's happened along the way because of my recovery. So I like to start out with, I was groomed as a 4-year-old. And sexual abuse happened later in my life when I was about 10 or 11 years old. And I went to my mother and I asked her, I contemplated for a long time because I was like, okay, what do I do here? That's a lot for a little girl. And so I went to her and she basically didn't stop to listen. She just basically said, get over it. So, what do you do with that? When you go to the person that you love and trust the most and they don't have time to listen or know what to do with that information. I know now that she did not know what to do with that information. So that information became a deep, dark secret because, trust is a thing, betrayal is a thing. And it's like, okay, I'm not putting myself out there again. So I kept that secret, not knowing that it was going to really form my path of my life. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. My struggles involve alcohol. I did substance abuse in high school. Later became lust in my life and what that looks like. I've learned now that lust is just kind of like a umbrella for anything that I could be attracted to or obsessed with. So it could be food, it could be shopping, it could be chocolate, it could be the flavor of the day. Okay, so that's kind of how I define lust, but I did have a sexual lust addiction. And I'll talk a little bit about that and how that infiltrated my life, my family, and my marriage. So one of the bottoms, obviously would be the day that my husband found out that I had an addiction to lust. And what I thought was going to be the worst day of my life turned out to be the best day of my life. I was 49, turning 50, and I just kind of said a little prayer to God, and I'm like, God, something's got to change. Something has got to be better in my 50s than they were up into that point. So keep in mind, for 40 years, I lived in secrecy, I lived in deceit, I lived in denial, I lived in a place of wanting to just be numb. And that's what I used to numb out was many different things. Once I started getting sober, which I've been sober for 10 years now by the grace of God, but I look back at the things that I used to distract myself to keep me basically numb. And I'm not numb anymore. I heal, I see, I have clarity, I have focus, and most importantly, I have the God of my understanding in my life, which I'm really grateful for. So the other thing with bottoms is that because I didn't know what emotions were or how to feel, I would just go from series of emotional bottom. And I described it like a vortex. And I would spiral down, and nobody knew this. I was great at hiding it. Spiral down, and then slowly try and climb my way out. And part of that was, in the marriage, thinking that if I did everything perfect, if I had everything ready when he got home, if I was just doing everything that I thought was expected of me, then he was happy, then I was happy. Until I realized that there's absolutely no way that he can make me happy. There has to be a power greater than myself, right? So that's a little bit about my emotional bottoms. And, I didn't realize it, but talking a little bit about the lust, my father passed away in 2013. And I didn't think it was that traumatic for me, but you know what? I was numb through the whole thing. And after I got sober, I started realizing how I used lust to escape from the reality of his death. But one of the things that I was faced with is, so why do you think your addiction escalated after he died? And one of the things that I realized and learned was he provided me with compliments, attention. He was like a source of my life that I hadn't gotten in other areas. Not that my husband wasn't loving, but it was something that I grew up with. And so once that was gone, my addiction really escalated to a new level, trying to fill that void of what he was providing for me. We call it, anyway, basically it was just, like attention under the grid, like a covert type session. That's what I'm trying to say. It was never overt, like he never sexually abused me, but yet there was an emotional attachment. Okay, so anyway, I have a lot to share about those 4 years. So if you're interested in learning more, I'll be happy to do that. Since I'm on a little time frame, I will move on to what my recovery looked like and currently looks like. And so after I mentioned D-Day, which was March 16, 2015, my husband been suspicious about some of my behaviors, and finally just the beautiful thing that happened was that day, I was in my kitchen and I had my phone laying on the counter, and he came home early. And so I was standing there cooking and preparing supper, and the phone rang, and it was my acting out partner. And I was like, oh, great, what do I do now? And I had this person in my phone listed as a female. So anyway, bottom line was I answered the phone, and he could hear from a distance that it wasn't a female. And so he confronted me and said, oh, so who is that? So after 3 lies, I finally just came out with it and just told the truth. And I had absolutely no idea where that was going to go. And you know what? I was so broken and so dead inside that I didn't care where it went because I knew I needed help. But here's the miracle in that. Right before he came home, I was at my kitchen window, and I had literally asked God, I need help. I cannot quit. First time I ever did that. I prayed before, but I really hadn't surrendered it yet. And that's when things changed. I mean, you talk about a direct phone line, it was like 30 minutes. He came home, I made the prayer, he came home, boom, I'm on my new journey. That's how fast it went. And it was just perfect timing for me. Didn't have a clue what was ahead. So quickly, ended up in therapy for the 3rd time, and started, the deep dive into childhood and how my childhood had affected everything I'd done in my adulthood, and especially my marriage. And that's why we're here today, is to talk to you about our coupleship and how we have survived and surrendered and accepted all of these things to be able to help other people. And I ended up in a 12-step program. I've been to AA, I've been to SA, which is Sexaholics Anonymous. I've been to Al-Anon, I've been to S-Anon. I do qualify for OA for overeaters. Gosh, the list is long. But I certainly put all of those under the category of just lust. Whether it's lust for people, lust for pleasing people, lust for assuming, lust for expectations, whatever it is, that's how I label it. So what does recovery do for me? Well, it gives me tools. I had heard, just pray. You need to surrender this. It's all about God's will, not your will. And I'm like, what does that even look like? I have absolutely no idea how to do that. And so the program's taught me how to do that. And so, I get to accept what is happening in front of me. I have to accept it before I can surrender it. Otherwise, it's just going to roll around in my brain. And if I'm having something rolling around in my brain, I am not sober in my thinking because I'm obsessed with whatever is going on at the time. And so I've learned how to recognize when I'm not present and when things aren't clear. My husband kindly printed off a bunch of information there, and it's some of the tools that we use. And it's been extremely helpful on how to get out of my head and be present with one another, with my children, with employees, whoever I need to be present with, God mainly. I learned to learn my emotions. that are there. I went to a treatment center in Arizona, and they wanted to know what the 8 basic emotions were, and I just sat there. I was like, I have no clue. They had a big sign on the wall to kind of help you distinguish that there were. He's got a huge chart there with lots of feelings on there as well. And so I started doing daily check-ins with myself because keep in mind, I was numb for years. And now I'm faced with all these emotions that I'd never experienced before. Scary, painful, resentment, fear, and why I chose addiction to camouflage all of those things that I didn't want to feel. And so that was part of my daily check-in as a tool, and I still do that now. We are very big into trying to help other couples. We go to conferences and conventions. That's a big tool for us. With recovery in general, or just a relationship with God, it's a daily thing. It's not like show up on Sunday and I'm going to pray while I'm here, and then I'm going to go out and do Angie's will all week, and then come back on Sunday again. That doesn't work. That's in our language is self-will run riot, and that was me. I thought I could do it. I thought I could do it by myself. So those are some of the things that I use for tools. We have slogans in our program, which are awesome. And one of my favorites is, "This too shall pass." It doesn't mean that it's going to be forever. Whatever's going on in front of me right now, I can say to myself, okay, this is where I'm at. This is happening right now, but it's not forever. And have a lot of slogans. One day at a time, you've maybe heard that. It's very true. Don't want to live in the past. Don't want to live in the future. Need to stay present where I'm at. So some of the miracles in our family, we have 4 sons. When D-Day happened, our youngest was in middle school and our oldest was turning 21. And each one of them were on a destructive path, and we didn't even know it. The youngest one was gaming all the time. The second one got caught stealing at Kohl's. The third one was in a sexual relationship with a female. And the fourth one was, the list is long for him. So, we were completely naive, thinking that we were just like this perfect family and that we had it all together. I described it sometimes like when your house and it's all lit up at night and someone looks inside, everything just looks like perfect, right? But on the inside, it was just upside down, and we didn't even know it. So anyway, miracles that our children are on a recovery path. We are very transparent with our kids. They know our story. They've dipped their toes in recovery, and we can talk about real things at the dinner table. It's the most amazing thing ever. It's something that I would have ever have dreamed about, talking about the difficult things with family, with husband. It's just such a gift. I can't tell you how much of a gift it is. In fact, superficial conversations don't even happen at our house anymore. It's just like spot on. Here's the next thing. And usually it's about our faith tradition, which is something that never happened in the past, which is all of us are growing in that area. I have forgiveness for all that's harmed me. I don't harbor resentments anymore. I was full of resentment. I was full of anger, and I was full of fear, and I didn't even know it. And once I got sober, all of those I had to deal with, every single one. But I am so grateful because I don't have those anymore. And if I do feel a resentment coming on, guess what? I have a recovery family, and I have tools, and I have literature, and I have podcasts, and I have all these things that I can go to help me get through what I need to go to. But more importantly, I need to go to the person that I'm struggling with and let them know, hey, this is what's going on. And you know what? I can't do that with everybody because some people are just toxic. So if they're toxic, guess what? I get to accept it, and I get to surrender it, and I get to go on. I cannot fix anyone, right? I'm powerless over every person, place, or thing. I have an amazing recovery family. I can't tell you. We have friends all over the world. We've spoken Israel. We just got back from Italy. And we have friends in probably every state of this country that when we see them, it's automatically like the best ever. I mean, I can't even tell you because we have no barriers, we have no walls, we know our weakness, we lead with our weakness, and we all get each other, right? It's just a beautiful thing. 2 minutes, okay. Let's see, what else do I want to share with you? I guess one thing as far as a slogan that's one of my favorites is Holtz always wins. Holtz was given out to you. You may have it: hungry, angry, lonely, sick, tired, stressed. We were in Florida at a conference, and an old timer, we call people that's been in program a long time an old timer, so I guess I'm technically an old timer now. And Holtz always wins. If I'm hungry, if I'm tired, if I'm stressed, things are going to come out sideways, or I'm going to receive things and it feels sideways. And so, one of the things we do in our family, with our kids, with our marriage, is we let each other know, hey, I got some Holtz going on. Well, how many you got going on? Sometimes it's all of them. And we know to steer clear. It's like, okay, if you need me, I'm over here. And you know what? That's changed our family just by knowing where we are physically, emotionally, spiritually, and being able to share that with each other. Another fun quote that may or may not resonate with you, but I heard this in Colorado, and it's, I'm sicker than I think I am. And what that means to me is just because I'm in recovery doesn't mean that I have it all together. So kind of like the set aside prayer I said at the beginning, I need help. I cannot do this alone. And I may be seeing things or experiencing things sideways at that moment and not even know it. So I am not cured. I don't want to be cured, because if I'm cured, then I don't need God. And I need God to continue this path that I'm on now. And sometimes, a lot of times, he reminds me, hey, he'll throw a little suffering in for me, just so I know that I'm not on my own and that I need to be working harder with my connection with him or with my husband or whomever. But mainly it's all a very spiritual journey. It lines up with my faith tradition amazingly, and for that I am very grateful. So thanks for letting me share.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to test y'all. There's some of my scholars out there that know the Bible well. Okay, you're timing me, sweetie. For 15. John 8, 1 through 11. Who can help me out there? John 8, 1 through 11. Yes, sir. And what did Jesus say? Yeah. So, yes, John 8, 1 through 11, the woman caught in adultery. So I was a pilot in the military. I grew up on a farm, northwest Missouri. I came from a family that was workaholics. Didn't have much addictions in my family. I can't even think of anything from that was addiction side. It was just all based around work. we were married 27 years when I found out, about this new way of life. And it would be nothing for me to be working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. I wouldn't think twice about it. In that time period where Angie comes from a family with a lot of stuff cooking, she even saying one of her grandmothers worked in a brothel house and was killed in a brothel house. I mean, so we had these two families coming together. I'm on the one side that's controlling, managing, fixing, caretaking. That's what I'm attracted to. That's a typical family that we chat with. You have the ones who like to caretake and the ones who like to fix with the other folks. So I was in the military. I was in the Gulf War. I had some PTSD going on over there, so I had to work through that too. I was in the military for 10 years. I come back. I couldn't get back in an airplane to fly. So I started working on that side of my trauma, and we started some businesses. I was really good at working. And, early in my life, what put me on that journey of controlling and managing, my dad, when he was really young, I was a 6-year-old and my brother was an 8-year-old. We were in the back in the timber. We lived on a big farm. My dad cut his knee with a chainsaw. He couldn't move. He was bleeding to death. I was a 6-year-old. My brother was an 8-year-old. This was back before. Can you just put yourselves, how many people have 6 and 8-year-olds? Raise your hand. Okay. Pretend you're cut and you can't move and you have a 6-year-old and 8-year-old that have to get you out of a timber. Well, that's where I was. Man, this makes me cry just as much. So we dragged him into the back of an old CA Alice Chalmers. It was like 1956. We're trying to get out of the timber. There was thorny locusts everywhere. No phones, of course, at that time. We had to drive him to a neighbor. And at that time, my dad's head was in my lap, bleeding to death. We get to our neighbor's house, and they take him off to the hospital. He heals from that, but that trauma as a child, as a 6-year-old, catapulted me in life where I'm never going to be out of control. I'm going to control everything. So, once I went to that, then, we had some, the discovery of this in my life. I will tell you, when I first got in, I didn't know what it was. How many people know the Serenity Prayer? Raise your hand. Yeah, there's some that don't know. I had no idea what the Serenity Prayer was. And that it says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Just want you to know, if I'm standing in a hula hoop right here, the only thing I can change is what? I can only change the things that's inside this circle. I tried to control everything. That's who I was. And I will tell you, I've been around a lot of folks. I've helped out over 500 men come into this journey of trying to repair relationships, as a relationship I had. And, there's so many of us that, if we could just have the understanding that we kill relationships when I'm trying to control things. So this is for me. I was never at a suicide rate level or homicide. I've been around a lot of people that have been. I'll tell you one that a guy was at the bottom of an apartment complex where the guy was working, and he called me. He's in Arizona, and he's all dressed in black. He has a handgun, and he has tools, and he called me because I'm on some lists out there that people call me if they're 911. And he says, hey, I'm about ready to kill this person because this person betrayed my wife. And he has the tools. He goes, I'm an atheist and and I don't care about myself. And I said, you know what? Why don't you just tell me your story? And he paused on killing that person. And we talked about it. And he and his family got into, a recovery, got into therapy, and their family's doing well at this time. But the point of reference, what I was saying is the only person I can change is myself. I pray sometimes if my life is complacent for God to give me suffering, because there's always shortcomings I can work on. The small venial sins, patience, tolerance, judging. In my world, if I give an opinion to somebody, not to kids above around the age of 13, if I give an opinion to somebody that they didn't ask for it, that's a slip in my recovery. If I gave an opinion to somebody that they didn't ask for it, it's a slip. Why? Because some people, it's an addiction. They want to give their opinions to everything. And that's where that road starts. Another thing, if I think about something more than 3 or 4 times in my brain, I went to my therapist, she was a Catholic therapist, thank God. And I told her, I said, in the business world, I think of a problem 100 times this way and 100 times this way before I go into a legal battle or something. And she goes, Kevin, that's sick. Why do you do that? And I go, doesn't everybody do that? She goes, no. She goes, how about think about it 3 or 4 times this way and hand it off to God? She goes, is it Kevin's will or is it God's will? So in my world, if I think about something more than 3 times, 4 times, that's a slip in my recovery. It's a venial sin to me. Because I want to control everything. And I'm not allowing God to come into my life. So the wonderful thing is, when I got into recovery and, something like this happened to me, there was really no men out there. It was pretty much females that had, the man did something and the females got into my area of recovery, the Anon side. It's like Al-Anon and AA. Those are all, it's lopsided if you guys know anything about those recovery. I knew nothing. For y'all who know nothing about 12-step, I knew zip. It was 10 years ago. I've been in 10 years ago the 18th of May. Yeah, that gives me a big round of applause. How about a big round of applause? In our other groups, if somebody would say that, everybody would applaud. I get you involved in that community. So when I came in, so many of us think that it's somebody else's problems, and we have no problems. When I first came in, I said my life was perfect. I thought it was. It's all those little things, the judging, the intolerance, the impatience, all those others, the workaholism, 5-year project. I always ask somebody when they first come in, this is what I ask. If you want to kind of drill down in your own selves on, hey, where's an area of a shortcoming? When you have fear, when you're depressed, when you feel isolated, when you feel triggered, where do you lean into? What do you lean into when you have some of those things on? You have anxiety. We know what it's like with having kids, lots of kids running around. That's a crazy time in your life. We get it. Where do you lean into? Gaming, watching football, drinking, narcotics, working. What I did, I found a project to work on. Hey, I'm out of here. I'm going to find a project to work on. Poof, I'm gone. What did I lean into? That's what I did. So that's what I had to work on in all those areas. So when I have that pull, I want to go do that, then I have to pause and ask God, God, help me to work on this area of my life. Because the whole thing is, it's a malady in my life not to have God into my life to fill up this big hole. And those holes are typically brought to me, that I've noticed, from my family tree of origin. That's why I like this one sheet of paper I gave everybody here. You know, I challenge you all. You see this paper? It's a codependency tree. I challenge you all to look at that sometime. Each one of you guys circle 5 items on there. You know, alcoholism, bipolar. I mean, there's just so many of them on there. Sexual diversion, dependency. Circle 5 of them. Circle 5 of some of the worst ones. Then I question, that's your spouse doing that to you. Will you go through the marriage with that? When we talk about better or worse, that's what we mean. Betrayal. Will you go through the marriage with that? Pornography. Alcoholism. Somebody got hurt. They got onto drugs. So they're hooked on medicated drugs, medical marijuana. Will you go through the journey with somebody like that? That's where you find true love. So I saw in the booklet, it said, divorce lawyer to a beautiful marriage. And that's where we are. We were in the divorce lawyer's office, and it was another Catholic dude, thank God. It's so funny how God put so many wonderful Catholics in our journey. And we're talking about divorce and everything, and he goes, hey, have you ever thought about going to see an addiction therapist? And I go, no, it's not me. It's all her, you know, all this. He goes, no. He goes, I'm going to even do something better. This is a lawyer. He's wanting money from me. He goes, you know what? I'm going to call this addiction therapist. Right now, I have her personal cell phone. She's usually full, but I'm going to call her right now and tell her that you're going to come see her. I go, what? That's crazy. So he did, and we did, and 10 years later, I couldn't even dreamt of having such a beautiful marriage. And how many people we get to chit chat with and help out all over the world. You know, I have talked to so many people. You've heard some of the worst ones, you know. So I was homicidal, but I will tell you my disease, my addiction. We call it kind of codependency. That's what's on this thing, codependency, controlling, managing, fixing. So is there a functional? Of course it's functional. It's the dysfunctional area that affects people. That can kill relationships just as much as alcoholism. Okay, are you ready for this? My disease of codependency, I see worse than somebody who has alcoholism and or, I don't care, sexaholism, gambling, whatever. I see that as a worse disease. Whoa, that's gonna wrap your brain around that one, huh? It's hard to see that, isn't it? And you say worse, what am I judging? Because, as I just said, if I think of something 3 times more than that, that's a slip in my recovery. You know, I wanted to control everything around me. I wanted to fix everything. And it becomes overwhelming in my brain. When you're an alcoholic, you become sober and you work on your journey, but you say, I'm sober right here. This is my date. I've been 10 years sober, which is wonderful. I look at those guys and I go, wow, or ladies, you're lucky. I can't hardly stay sober on my side of the street, you know, on judging, impatience. At the end of the day, I'm going, okay, and my, you know, when I'm doing my conscious contact at the end of the day, going through everything, okay, man, I was really not tolerant with that person. I could have been a better listener there. I could have really, you know, just listened there. So I also, on my calendar every day that I have, I commit my works to the Lord and my plans will be established. Proverbs. Commit my works to the Lord. So what's that mean to me? So I own a company, and if I have somebody call me, I don't care if I'm in a business meeting with staff. High majority of the time, I'll say, guys, I got to pause. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to take this phone call. Because I'm truly committing my works to the Lord, and my plans will be established. If I'm in adoration and I get a call from somebody who needs help, I will get up out of adoration and go talk to that person. Because in our world, everything happens for a purpose and a reason. Everything. And when you get to understanding all this, you can start putting all the pieces of the puzzle together. You know, some of the other beautiful miracles that's happened in our lives is, you know, our children. I can tell you this: apples don't fall far from the trees. My dad was a workaholic. His dad was a workaholic. They don't fall far from trees. You know, addictions wise, you know, typically somebody will go, you know, be addicted, have an addictive behavior, or they'll have a controlling behavior. That's a typical journey with us. You know, and when somebody first told me that when my kids were young, I said, no, that's never going to happen. 10 years later, guess what? It did happen. Every one of them had behaviors. But the great thing is, the more I work on my shortcomings, and the more I really drill down on my faith and religion, the more that rubs off onto the kids. So that's why I'm so proud of y'all on being here and really trying to grow in this area. Because kids will follow. It's amazing. Some of the other things I have here, I'm going to go through some of these. Think if you guys are ever in a disturbance, you know, how many people in your, as a couples, can you raise your hand if you've ever been in a disturbance between the two of you guys? Wow, several say no. No. So this is a wonderful avenue to use to when you get in a disturbance. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? So when you feel disturbed and you've got that gray cloud coming over your brain, say, pause. I want to get that sheet of paper that Kevin and Nancy just gave us, and I want to go through this in our brain. I promise you, it'll change your life forever. And do it with your kids. Do it with peers at work. Do it anywhere. Okay, the next thing is, Angie talked about halts. That is a game changer. If you can understand what hungry, angry, lonely, tired, sick, and stressed is in your body, it will change everything. Because then, how many of you guys have been in a room and you said, somebody says something and you go, whoa, that didn't seem like that person. That's completely different. How many people have felt that before? Why? Because they had a lot of halts going on. And remember, it's not you. It's not you. It's that person. You can say, well, that probably has got 4 or 5. If you're good at having a vulnerable friend, you could say, dude, how many of these halts you have going on in your body? Now that's when you get to become really vulnerable with people. Tell me how many halts. We'll do that in our family, and we'll say, oh, man, I got 4 or 5. And I'm going, whoa, I'm not talking to you right now. Okay, what other sheet have I got on there that you haven't seen? Codependency. This is a great one. I put this one together myself. This is what I put together of my journey with emotional sobriety. So that's what I call people. That's when I talk to people about our journey. It's emotional sobriety. That's where you don't think of the past. You don't think of the future. You stay in the moment. You allow God to come into your life all the time. How many people think of the past and kind of rehash the past? How many people have a tendency to think about the future and go crazy about the future? Okay, all of y'all that raise that, and if you do it more than 2 or 3 times, that's a slip in my recovery. So do you see how it's hard for me to stay sober? Emotionally sober, I'm saying. Emotionally sober. It's all about staying emotionally sober. What other ways in our Catholic religion? You call it serenity. That's what we call it. A place of serenity, live it all the time. By doing this, this helps out our intimacy. It helps out our non-sexual intimacy. It helps out our sexual intimacy. If one of us is not emotionally sober because we had a tough day at work or something, or she called and somebody was crying to her, we'll say to the other person, hey, we want to pause here at this time period of communicating or doing whatever. We want to be emotionally sober when we're together. Okay, so on this one it says no assuming. How many people like to assume a lot? That's a slip in my recovery program. Okay, no expectations. How many people have lots of expectations? You should be doing this should happen. The dishes should be done. That's a slip in my recovery program. Another one, know your needs. Knowing your needs. That gets blurry. In there, that becomes boundaries. Really good boundaries. How can we have good, solid boundaries? You go, Kevin, how can you not have expectations? Okay, it's a long story. I can always, if you have questions, buzz us. Next one is no comparing. How many people can say, wow, that family has 6 kids. I have 10 kids. I want 10 kids. Yeah, that's comparing. No comparing. None. The worst thing was, I can remember this, and I'll help you out. The guys know my son, Michael. How many people know my son, Michael Hummer? Okay, so anyway, he came home one day, and I happened to make amends, and I did make amends. When he came home, he had all A's. I mean, he was the top of his class. He was a stud. He comes home, and he has a B+. And I'm comparing him to the others in his class that's above him. And I said, dude, what's up with that B+? That's how sick I was back then. I was comparing him to others. I don't do that now. All our kids are different. If kids over here doing his stuff and the kids doing this stuff, be grateful for differences. No comparing. I want my kids to be wrestlers, all of them, or get Eagle Boy Scout. Have Eagle Boy Scouts all the way through. That was almost like a mandatory thing. No, at the end of my journey, I said, nope, no. Any other comparing statements? No talk from Felix. The Felix chart is amazing, by the way. Nancy and I, we do what we call sacred talks. Sacred talks. We'll go around and we'll say, okay, what's the top plate feeling in my brain? Top plate emotion. Love. Okay, what's love stand for? Okay, I really loved how Angie was playing with our grandson. Okay, top plate shame. Okay, I really had shame about, I chatted with a person and I didn't give them the best, experience. Share that with one another. Share feelings with your kids. Sacred talks is what we call it. We go around the table and we share our feelings. If you want to know more about that, give us a shout. We have some beautiful, wonderful miracles around that. The last thing there is stay in the moment. That's all about what? Staying in the moment is all about what? Being emotionally sober. That's emotionally sober. That allows God to give you pokes, nudges, hear your guardian angel, whatever. That is how I have a better relationship with God. Okay? Did I go through all of them? You guys got any in front of you? 5? Oh, no use statements. That's another slip in my recovery program. How many people say you should go pick up the clothes? You should eat all the food on your plate. You should. How many people have ever said use statements like that? Raise your hand. Guess what? That's a slip in my recovery program. No, you should have, would have, could have. Why? Because each time you say a use statement, are you ready for this? Is shame-based. You're giving shame to that person. And guess what happens? If you hit a person over the head enough with those use statements, they're going to go off to where irritated, depressed, they'll go off to addictions. 100%. You say, well, Cal, how do you say it then if you're frustrated about my son who didn't clean up his room? You do what? You do what? I feel statements, 100% different. Hey, Jimmy, I feel really sad that your room isn't cleaned up. I would prefer that you would clean the room up and make me really happy. Did Jimmy get any shame from that? None. And if you look on one of them, there's the one with the drama triangle, that little sheet of paper. Do you guys have it? It's on the back. It's on a little sheet. Oh, yeah, thank you. That's it right here. This is it. If you guys, it's called boundary talk. Boundary talk. So this is exactly how you can really get good at communicating in your family on without giving shame. You know, it says the sensory data. When I saw that the clothes were in your room on the floor, it looks like a pig's pen. I mean, I guess you don't have to say that, but when it does, what I make up about that is I would really, when I make up about it, it hurts my stomach when I walk by. The next thing is, how do I feel? I would prefer and I would feel happy if you'd have it cleaned up sometime by 6 o'clock. It's a lot of work. I'm going to tell you, guys, that's a whole rewiring of my brain. Versus, damn it, you should clean up your room and you're not going to eat before 6 o'clock if you don't do it. There's a big difference, and it changes dynamics of the family. That's what we're talking about. Changing the family tree of origin is what we talk about. It's all about how to communicate and have you with. That's good. On the back side, it's about triggers. This is a really good one, too. I love this one. Okay, so this is all about self-awareness. How do you feel when you don't feel heard? What emotion comes up in your body? How do you feel when you feel judged or unimportant or blamed or left out? Really, deep down, have those feelings of understanding in your body, because all this affects intimacy. Into me you see. It affects the vulnerability with people. I mean, this is the next level of emotional sobriety, is finding triggers and why I lean in this direction or I lean in this direction. When I felt rejection, okay, I know there's some guys out here that's going to go with me here. When you feel rejection, it just goes through your body like, I don't like rejection. I like to control. Any guys out there or women? Any? No, nobody says, I'm not going to raise my hand. He's going to give me a hard time. But rejection was really tough at the beginning for me. And when I started learning about it, I felt rejection. I go, whoa, that's what that feeling feels like in my body when I am rejected by somebody's thought process or not doing what I want. Whoa, kind of hit a brick wall. But then I was able to work through that. Okay, so this is a beautiful flyer. Is that all of them that I think I did? Oh, last one. Okay, the boundary one. The boundary one is a really good one too. Just read that. It's there to protect you. And I'm going to end with Bill W. in the AA book talks. He talks about, trust God. The AA Big Book, by the way, was written by a priest that went to St. Mary's College in Kansas City, Missouri. Just if you didn't know that, which is amazing. It says, trust God, clean house, shortcomings, clean your shortcomings, and help others. Trust God, clean house, help others. And with that, I'll pass. Thanks, guys.
So, any questions? Brother Maximilian? I think, yeah, you just yell out, that's the way it should be. Yeah.
So I thank you, first of so much for being here. It's wonderful to, as Andy said, it's wonderful to hear you guys experience strength and hope. I wanted to ask you a question, really kind of repeating two questions that were asked of me on Monday. One was Andy asking about the role of human formation, human and emotional formation in raising children and preparing them for being ready to answer God's call in whatever shape that comes in their life. And then the other one was actually Tom asking about how you can build your children up in loving their freedom so that like they don't feel pressured to pursue a particular path in life. And I'd love to hear both of you guys speak on that because you have more experience than I do.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is we heard along the way, what would I want to hear if I was that child? And, coming from a place where I wasn't heard, just being heard is just a lot. Like Kevin talked about, we did these sacred talks with our family where we each, think about this, when I started learning about emotion, I was a child, even though I was in my 50s. And so I grew up with my children, and we learned how to talk about emotions together. I said, hey, your mom's growing up with you. It was kind of a joke, but it was really true. And so we would go around and listen. And the really great thing about that was that there's no platform. You can't bait, you can't button push, you can't respond. You just listen. And so I think just really listening, that if a child feels safe with their parent, that there's not going to be you statements, if there's not going to be anything that he talked about, then this amazing, miraculous relationship unfolds and you're able to communicate their needs and your needs. And we call it, like he said, we don't give our opinion. We ask, do you want our experience? And sometimes they say no. So we just talk about it ourselves.
Yeah, so what she led with, I want everybody to hear this. This is so important. If you take anything away from this, take this away. You're sitting in your daughter's chair or your son's chair, and you're saying, what would I want to hear from my mom and dad before you talk to them? You sit in their shoes. I don't hear shame. I don't hear comparing. A quick little brief story. One of our sons, I was a control freak. He wanted to be high in the sport he did. He became a 3-time champ. He went to a school, a D1 school. I was controlling. We went to the Olympic Training Center. He got really good there. He went to school. And he wasn't controlling himself anymore. He had to do himself. I wasn't there to help. He fails out of the D1 college. Ends up in a really, really dark, bad space because I was a controller when he was growing up. He comes up out of it, and now he went to college, and he has a beautiful job helping other people. My point of reference is God has a plan. Stand back to allow God to work with kids. No comparing. The person wants to be whatever, this position to this position. Just allow that child to grow in that area, because it doesn't necessarily mean that's where they're going to be at. That's happened to our sons. Yeah, one of the things that we learned about comparison, just a quick slogan, is comparison steals all joy.
Oh, I just had a question. This is just about something trivial, on a day-to-day basis. When you are talking about getting a boy to clean up their room, well, a boy's relationship is obviously so different from a mother as far as being a woman. I don't have everything he needs as a male, so he gets that, more from the dad. But when I'm trying to get him to do things, the dad kind of makes the structure of the house, makes it known, like, the children need to obey. But what do you do if Jimmy doesn't have his room cleaned up by 6 o'clock? I don't have enough time to talk about feelings all day, but I've had enough work on myself in my life, like, you know, in therapy, I know very well how to talk about feelings, and I've learned, I did that too much with my toddlers, and they needed more discipline on that other spectrum of, they needed firmness more than talking about.
You know, one of the things that we learned, because we kind of had to be functional, so there's a place in there to be functional. And one of the things we learned was another item I write on my weekly calendar. Remember, one is commit my works to the Lord, and your plans will be established. Another one that I write on there for me, how important is it? So there was a time period that I was fighting with one of my sons who wouldn't clean his damn room. And I just say, you know what? How important is it? He's not going to be around here long. I just shut the door and leave. That's what I had to do. It just riddled my insides. But there's a time, but you know what's the funny thing? Not too many years later, he started bringing up, you know, he wanted to have girls and friends come around. It was spotless by that time. I'm going, you little turkey. 2 years ago, you didn't think about fixing it, and now it's like spotless. You want me to use a vacuum cleaner. So, but that's hard.
And what I was thinking about too was, you know, good boundaries and consequences. I mean, we would talk about, you know, like what's the consequence here? We're talking, like he said, like 13 and under, because middle school, you know, that's a whole different phase. But we had a plan. We both were on the same page. And there was time when we were doing our secret talks around the table with the family. So what kind of consequences do you think are appropriate for these kinds of behaviors? And they actually were pretty much more stricter what the kids came up with than what we were going to implement. And so, you know, just setting boundaries, again, it just gets back to the communication. And, you know, it's sometimes, it's just, you know, maybe pick your battles type of thing. But, you know, that's kind of our experience.
Yeah, but I do like that. Asking the rest of the family, hey, what's the consequence for this? What do you guys see this? That's having what we call in our journey a group conscience and allowing to hear the kids. It's a big deal. That's when they start hearing, yes.
Could you guys share more about your thoughts with teens and how you handle that?
With teens?
Yeah.
So for me, if you're above 13, 14, kids on its own. And I got a lot of examples. If I don't talk to them about if they want to fail a class, if they don't have their homework done, I don't care. You know why? They're going to find out the consequence of it. And it's not going to be from dad. And it's not pleasant. Okay with that. If, in my experience, I controlled all that with my first child. Have your homework done, have this done, da, 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 da. And his fallout was in college. Last child, I didn't do it at all. I said, dude, it's yours. If you don't want to do that, you don't put gas in your car, and you're late to school, I don't care. And guess what? His growth was instant college. Crazy growth. So.
You know, Kevin shares a story sometimes about our oldest. He came in the house one day and his car was making a knocking sound. And we were already in recovery. And long story short, he blew an engine. But we didn't say, well, you need to go put oil in it. He knew, he was what, 20? He knew he needed oil, but he chose not to do the oil. And he was along the highway with a blown engine. So those kind of experiences, like the ones that we're sharing with you, you know, again, it's flexibility, it's functional, it's kind of like seeing their needs.
So what happened was, he asked me earlier, I heard the knocking. I said, you want my experience about the knocking? He says, no, Dad. A week later, his engine's blown. Guess what? I'm not loading in the money. That's called caretaking. That's your consequence for a behavior you did. You know what he did? He went to work for Science in St. Joe at the hot dog factory. He was on 12-hour shifts. He worked there for one summer. He comes out and goes, John, there's no shit and wind. Never going to be working in a factory in my life. I'm going to work a hell of a lot harder than colleagues from here. And that's what he did. It was a light switch. His own consequence.
Kevin and Angie, thank you so much. I just can't really thank you enough. And these are the conversations that I think we really, really desire and need to have. So thank you. I need to have them. I have two questions. The first is, the more we discover about, our codependent issues, our issues, the more we realize that maybe what attracted us to our husband were these issues in our lives. And actually, the things we desire on this codependence tree come from this hole, this wound in us. But so my question is, what is a healthy desire? Because the desire to be loved and to love is good. But, there's so many good things in the world. So how do we distinguish the healthy desire from, and how do we not just look at our relationships as I was compelled to Aaron because of the balance of codependency in each of us? That's the first question. The second question is, so we've bombed this. We have a 17-year-old and a 3-year-old. We've assumed, we've had expectations, we don't know our needs, we've compared, we've used statements, we don't talk from our feelings, and we don't stay in the moment. Is it too late? Is it ever too late? And how do you begin? So those are my two questions.
Okay, so I need to clarify the first one. Are you talking more like sexual desires and that sort of thing, or what, and how that's a balance, or just
all
love and
all desires for things, all desires for people, all desires for affection, all of it.
Well, my therapist said that intimacy starts in the kitchen, and all that meant was, just coming together and learning to communicate. I know that from experience, we females are completely wired differently than the men. And that was, once we started getting our communication in order, then I wanted to be around him. That's one of the things that I was seeking, was that sort of thing. Finding out, and I'm really not good at this, what's romantic look like? I did not know romance. I did not know dating. I did not know courtship because of my growing up. And he comes in the relationship with all those things. So it's been a struggle, and he still gets irritated with me when I don't give him a card or bring flowers. It's just, I'm not wired that way. And so I continually have to work on it. But the point of that is kind of finding out what each other's love language is. There's a great book on it if you haven't read it, 5 Languages of Love. And that really helped break down what his needs were, what my needs are. I don't know. One other thing I was thinking about was, regarding sexuality, learning what lust is and learning what love is. Our culture is so focused on the lust of everything, I don't care what it is, that we don't get a good glimpse of what, God's love looks like, being unconditional, talking about things that he's been talking about, being accepting and surrendering these things, because there's no perfect person, there's no perfect marriage. It's just like he said, are you willing to go through this journey together? And that's what I was thinking, and I've already forgot your second. Oh, absolutely not. Our oldest was turning 21 when I got into recovery. I'm the one that brought the house down. I'm the one that left for treatment. I'm the one that came back, sat everybody down at the table with the big book and made an amends, a living amends. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it's just like I'm making an amends for my behaviors, and that I'm going to live my life in such a way that I do not repeat these behaviors to the family. It's a lot different than saying I'm sorry. I'm sorry to me is like down here. Making an amends is an action. And if a person knows what they're making amends for, then they're conscious about their actions and their behavior. So long story short, he was turning 21 and now he's a therapist. And I was telling him the other day, I said, wow, your recovery journey started the same time as mine, but he wasn't done, we call it in program, trying to control and enjoy it. He was still out there doing his thing until he was so broken that, because he said to me, Mom, he goes, I know the solution. I know the answer. I'm just not ready to do that yet. And now he is. So it's not too late. It's a little bit more difficult because they're not in the home, but we also say in program it's attraction, not promotion. So Kevin's experiencing that right now with his work and his business. 4 boys swore up and down they would never work for their dad. And guess what? 3 of them are now willing to work with dad. And that's only because attraction, not promotion.
I think this is probably our last one.
And it's more of a
Thanks, Mimi.
comment. I think there's one simple answer to your 2 questions. And you've affirmed it, confirmed it. My life tip is grace. Hands down, the Lord brings us together in our weaknesses to challenge us through them toward the goal. And I see it, it's crystal clear. Like my weaknesses, the mirror that he holds up, not because he's telling me, but just who I see. If I'm not working on me, then we're going the wrong direction. But if there's not grace, I mean, our children are doomed, right? But we see it every day, you know, in who they are and who they're becoming. And you're like, you're reflecting me. I see how I screwed up, but you're still moving in the right direction. And it can't be possible without grace. And if that weren't there, then why would we need the Lord? I mean, our weaknesses is the strength because of who he is. And so it's so encouraging, the vulnerability. This is so helpful. All these words, I mean, like, I'm just angry all the time. But it can be expressed in so many ways. So it's so encouraging.
So at the bottom of some of those flyers is our phone number. Feel free to call us anytime, 24/7. If you have a problem, I want to chit chat with somebody. Talk to us. If you're not emotionally sober, give us a shout. Happy to be involved. Thank you.
Yeah, and for me, I don't take a lot of calls that I don't know. So text me first and just say, hey, I was at the conference or whatever, just so I kind of have a heads up. So.
Thank you. In all of our marriages, in all of our families, the worst fear is infidelity, addiction, lies so deep, a pit so deep that it looks like there's no way out. And what you did today was you came and you told us a story of a pit that was too deep to get out of, and you showed us a way out. Thank you. Well, 10 minutes, and then the little sisters of the lounge.
Here.
No, I love it. I love it.
More like
Oh. Yeah, nice. The third one, he looks around, says, jumps in. Why'd you do that? Yeah. Oh, that's what.
yeah.
Oh, really? Thank you so much. We need to.
No, that's just kind of how.
You know what he did? This is what I tried.
And then he was gone.
Tori's way. I have my.
So shattering.
Yeah, like seriously. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't even know. I try to read it. Now I don't.
I don't know. Yeah.
Sometimes I see.
What said, on my article.
I was just telling her, right?
My dad. And my dad loved me. So your story. Yeah. Oh, it's so it's my job. There's times that they terminate the school.
Okay, it's time for the people who can hear me and not see me to come into the room. Hello? Please come in and take your place.
Yeah.
I don't know if we should wait. No.
Colette, if you can hear this and you can be in here in the next 30 seconds, you'll be included. If not, they're going to start without you. They didn't want to start without you, I told them. So yeah, I'll just tell you the timeline, that we're gonna go at 12, we'll try to end about 5 minutes to 12. And then
Oh, please, maybe one before.
You have to draw the question. All right, so I'll just say a quick little thing. Most of you already know the Little Sisters of the Lamb. I met them about 15 or so years ago. 15 years ago in Spain.
Ooh, look.
And anyway, it's always a gift to have them here. And like I said before, their motto is "Wounded, I will not cease to love." Really, in my own life, that is both a goal and a promise thing.
So we'll start with a prayer. Under your mercy, take refuge, Holy Mother of God, despise not our petitions in our necessities, but deliver us from all danger. O Mary, ever glorious and blessed Virgin. Yes, Virgin Mary, we know you are here in this place. You are with us. We ask you to come, to be with us, to take us by the hand, to lead us to your Son, Jesus. And we ask you during this time to teach us, like you, to stand at the foot of the cross and to sing our Magnificat. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Thank you for welcoming us. Tom Hoops, right during the little pause, asked me, how are you feeling? Anxious, a little stressed, so you have fear? Yes. And how do you deal with that? Yeah. And yes, thank you, Angie and Kevin. Maybe my parents could have used this. Yes. And so the title of our talk is Wounded, I Will Never Cease to Love, Forgiveness, Fragility, and the Poverty of Love. It's a broad title to share very humbly about our experience, our life, the spirituality of our community. And it's not so easy to take up the mic after the beautiful witness that we've just heard. And thank you for, where are you? Oh, yes. Thank you for your vulnerability. And yes, it's really edifying. So we're the Little Sisters of the Lamb, and soon we'll celebrate the 50th anniversary of the birth of the charism of our community. We were born in France. That's where I got my accent from. But yeah, I only brought Americans. Oh, they only brought one French. How you did that. And our first sisters were Dominican sisters. And when the church was going a little crazy in the 60s and 70s, they really heard the call to be faithful to the sources of their order at the call of the Second Vatican Council. And Saint Dominic, it is not so known maybe as for Saint Francis, but was a great lover of poverty and of preaching by his way of life the good news of Christ to reach out to all of mankind. And so they heard a call to go back to more poverty and prayer. And after a few months living by herself, our foundress, Little Sister Marie, who's still alive, she's 83 years old, started a community life with two other of her sisters. And they said the best way to start something is to start in prayer. And so it was on the eve of the exaltation of the cross. And they decided that they would spend the whole night in prayer and in adoration. And in their hearts was this cry after some years of experience in Paris with the poor, with the homeless, with the drug addicts, with the college people, and to be close witnesses of so much suffering, and in their own hearts for sure, as each one of us. And in the world, there was this big cry, but why, Lord, does evil seem to be so prevalent? Why does it seem to prevail in the world? And what is your answer, Lord? And crying out to the Lord, they received the answer in a word of St. Paul to the Ephesians, chapter 2, verse 16. And the French translation says that Christ in his own person killed hatred, put hatred to death. The answer to evil is the total surrendering of Christ on the cross, receiving in his own flesh the consequence of our refusals and offering love and offering us the gratuitous gift of his resurrection after we put him to death. The answer to evil is to be vulnerable and offered. And we see that all this hatred in Jesus' body killed him, but he did not give the answer of vengeance or resentment, but just of surrendering. And this surrendering put an end to this cycle of violence and of death in his own person. And in his own death was planted the seed of victory because as you know, death is the consequence of the sin of our first fathers, Adam and Eve. And but in Jesus, death was an act of obedience and of life. And from within, death was destroyed in his death. And sadness from within can be turned into joy. And hatred from within was transformed into his endless love. And so from this contemplation of the Lamb of God, who never ceases to love, is our community born. And we try and live this out first in contemplating this begging love of God in Scripture, in the Word of God, in the liturgy that we love to sing and to, how do you say, is to celebrate in an ample way. Can you say that? Well, you understand. And but also in fraternal life, and which you have experienced in in the life of a couple. And so with this chapter of forgiveness that we have regularly, where we ask forgiveness for one another, from one another. And I remember the first time when I was a postulant, when I experienced this chapter of forgiveness, I was moved to tears because forgiveness was really lacking in my family. And so now my parents are divorced. That's why I said that they could have used your witness. But to see how it was lacking in my own family and in my own heart, and to see it lived out among the sisters was a balm of healing. And I could then look at this divide in my heart, at this wound with the confidence that there is a remedy. There is a remedy in Christ to all our wounds. And there's, we have a wonderful new Pope. So there are some articles being written about him that we should read. But I really encourage you to read what he says, because he really has a word for the whole church. And if you take only 15 minutes a week, you can read one homily, of the week, and just find nourishment in the words of our Holy Father. And I was really struck. Of course, we all know that his first words were "Peace be with you," like the risen Christ, and also that evil will not prevail in the face of so many wars and of a society that is just going really astray, as we can see every day. We can trust that Christ is among us and has a word of hope for today. And Pope Leo said to the diplomatic corps, not long after he was elected, "Peace is the first gift of Christ. My peace I give you. yet it is an active and demanding gift. It engages and challenges each of us. Peace is built in the heart and from the heart. And as Kevin say, I can only change myself, and welcome peace in my own heart for it to radiate around me. And peace is built by eliminating pride and vindictiveness and carefully choosing our words. So communication, you said. For words too, not only weapons, can wound and even kill, as we can experience in our daily life. And this reminds me of a little story some years ago, because we have a smile maybe today, but we also fight. We are very normal people. We just happen to be called to be religious, but it doesn't make us any better. I can speak for myself. And so that one day, so our life is built on the Word of God, which is Jesus Himself, the Word that upholds the universe, as we can read at the beginning of Hebrews. And so this Word that upholds the universe is this creative Word that created us in the beginning and has the power to recreate us anew every day when we listen to it, when we keep it. So let's be Catholics who love the Word. The Word is not only the treasure of Protestants, it's really the treasure of the Church. It's Jesus Himself. And so we are encouraged in our community to memorize it every day, to repeat it over and over again. And as we were driving here to Atchison, we first repeated each verse together of today's Gospel so that it imprints in our memories, in our intelligence, and little by little changes our hearts, maybe, to become this other Word of God for the others. And that day, the Gospel was the love of the enemies. So how does he say? Well, love your enemies and forgive. Pray for those who persecute you. And so as a good little sister, I want to be good and perfect, maybe controlling. And so I memorized my gospel and I was repeating it and I was so happy. We got out of adoration. I did my job well. I know it by heart, love your enemies. And who's my enemy today? Well, I think I'm okay. And then this sister comes to me right after the dishes at breakfast and she just tells me how I should cook today and what I should cook. And she was very forward. And, we come from different backgrounds and nationalities. And, well, even from the same country, you may not understand one another. But sometimes it's even harder from different culture. Somebody thinks they're gentle, and for you, they're just the most aggressive, persecutor. Which was that case in that morning. And then I swallow and I make a smile. Yeah, sure, I'll cook it that way. And then I started chopping my onions, and I'm like, and love your enemies. And what did she do? And I just realized how I hate her that for the saying that. And I'm oh man, oh yeah. And then I feel ashamed maybe, but I don't acknowledge it because I want to be a good sister. And I'm still my little vegetables and my onions, and then I think of what our co-founder, a Franciscan brother, likes to say, that Saint Francis says, when you receive a hurt, don't repeat it over and over again, but show in acts that you love them. And so I'm thinking this, and I'm like, oh, that's far too hard. I'm chopping, paf! I chopped my finger. And ooh, what am I doing now? And all of a sudden, I think it was really the Holy Spirit. I heard again, show them with your acts that you love them. And I thought, I need to ask her for help, for a Band-Aid, and to take care of my finger. And no, I'm not going to do that. Yes, you will. No. And she said, the other floor, yes, you go and you find her. And you show yourself little and vulnerable and that you need her. And so I went, and she took care of my finger. And all bitterness and resentment in my heart was gone. And I just realized, oh, it took a lot of pride and of acknowledging all the resentment and bitterness in my heart But in being little, I realized how much she could be. She could be, and there was love but coming from above, and not me making it. And maybe that's why we're called the little sisters. It's to try to embrace this way of littleness, not by our own means. And as I said, we're just very normal people. But in trying to embrace this way of life of Jesus, the eternal Son of God, who became man in a crib, in a manger, who was poor, who was in exile when he was just a baby, who was despised and put to death and died all naked, him, the Son of God, on a cross in such a shameful way, but for us, so that in all these places of our hearts, these wounds, these walls, these resentments, and this ugliness maybe of our heart, he went deep down in that place that we may be embraced and that we may not fear anymore to stand in that place, which is just the reality of our heart, and that we always try to escape. We always try to escape the human tragedy, but as Christians, we're called to embrace it in our hearts and in our whole life. And that's only this way that the world, little by little, can change, that we may welcome Jesus in our heart, in this vulnerability, in this place that is very uncomfortable. I'm 40 years old and I still feel so often uncomfortable. And because I try to escape that place, and to shine, but that's really where Jesus is waiting for us. And on the night of his agony and Holy Thursday at Gethsemane, there's this contemplation of Catherine of Siena to see Jesus' sweat of blood, not because of fear of his own life, but this anxiety of the heart. Will they receive the fruit of my passion? Will I die in vain, or will they receive the gift of my life? And in this tension, the agony of his heart and this utmost desire to be received, that his divine love may be received in our lives and in our souls for our salvation, but in letting us completely free. And that's why he became and is a lamb, because the lamb is offered to the slaughter and just offers his neck with no word, just silent, but because he's offered to our refusals, but also to the yes of our hearts. And this makes the beauty of our freedom, to be free to choose to love. And but it's not so easy. And there's a quote of the Catechism that really helps me. Paragraph 2843. It is in the depths of the heart that everything is bound and loosed. It is not in our power not to feel or to forget an offense, which we had well explained. We cannot forget the hurts of our lives. And it's not that they define us, because what defines us is God's love from all eternity, that he has willed us in his boundless mercy. And all these hurts, they've broken our hearts, but so that he may come into our brokenness and that he may shine through it and speak more loudly, maybe in the silence of our wounds, but that he may shine forth to the world that is so thirsty of him, even though they don't know it. But the heart that offers itself to the Holy Spirit turns injury into compassion. Turns injury into compassion. And so often I experience it. I hurt others, and we receive some hurts also. And it requires that we realize how much we are in need of Jesus now. And in accepting, I had, at that moment when I cut my finger, I had to realize the hypocrisy of my heart. I'm such a hypocrite. And I'm such a Pharisee. And so in French, there's this play on word. I was born and bred in Paris. And so when you're a Pharisee in French, you're a Pharisien, a Pharisien. And I'm a Parisian, and to realize how deeply rooted it is in me to be such a hypocrite, to hide my mistakes, because we want to make it, we want to be accepted and loved. And this knowledge of ourselves is the key to receive God's love. And St. Catherine of Siena, she's one of our patron saints, and she contemplated the Lamb along the nights, and she put words and to the charism, to the Dominican charism, that because Dominic did not left so many writings, but she, over 100 years, over a century later, she was taught by him, well, in visions and her experiences, but still she unfolds this mystery of the Lamb, and she says, how do we see the blood of the Lamb? And what is this blood? This blood is this utmost love of God and she asks the Lord, why was your side pierced? And the Lord answers her, my side was pierced after my death, so that people may see that suffering did not put an end to my love, but that my love was endless and continued after my death. And in the blood of the Lamb, the blood is this expression of God's love poured for us and anew in each Eucharist. And this blood of the Lamb is to be found in the knowledge of ourselves. She calls it the cell of the knowledge of oneself. In my heart, this little, so Colette likes this image that we're like snails. And I love snails because as a Parisian, I grew up in a small apartment and I was not allowed to have a pet. So the only pets that I had were snails on our balcony. And on Wednesday afternoon, I would take my snails to my friend's house, and on her balcony, we would have a snail race that they never finished. So I'm not sure so many have snails as pets, but that's what I had, so I really like them. My dad would eat them, which would gross me out. I have never eaten a snail in my life, even though I'm French. And so the snails can withdraw in his own little house, and that's the cell of our heart at any time. And you, even more than us, we have the immense privilege, even though we feel like so many people ringing the door, and we go out knocking on doors, and we go line up with the poor at the soup kitchen, and I need rest, I need Jesus, we can be frantic little sisters. And I think of you parents constantly given up like this broken bread. You're this broken bread that given up for your children all the time, united to Christ and broken up for them. And there is the only rest that you can find sometimes is we have, as I was saying, this privilege of having prayer, maybe more often than you do, at least sitting down in silence. But you can always withdraw from the busyness of the world in the silence of your heart. In this inner cell, as Catherine of Siena said, or Elizabeth of the Trinity, this French Carmelite, who would say that you can withdraw from the noisiness of the world in the silence of your soul. And it's just a quick look in the inside of the heart to find Jesus there or not to find him, to acknowledge my feelings, to acknowledge my limitations, and he gives us the grace anew. Why was I saying this? Yes. There was a story behind the snail. Well, whatever. Okay. And yes, but so it's to turn injury into compassion. And then the Holy Spirit purifies the memory in transforming the hurt into intercession. We need intercessors. We see we're hurt and we see things going not well around us in the world. But more than complaining, we need to intercede. And it's only the Holy Spirit in our hearts that can turn all the hurts and all the hurts that we see around into a power of intercession. And that's what the world needs now, intercessors. And we like to contemplate Our Lady as the one who keeps the word of God. She conceived him in her womb and gave him to the world, but she also kept all his words in her heart. And this word, we heard last Sunday, if any man, if a man loves me, he will keep my word. And my Father, no, and we will come, my Father will love him, will come to him and make our dwelling in him. If you want the Lord to dwell in your heart, keep his word. And she kept his word until the cross. And she was able to stand at the foot of the cross because of the experience and of the promises that she had heard at the Annunciation. He will be great and he will reign over the house of Jacob. And she still believed and could stand. And also with this word of the first Psalm, Psalm 1, happy is the man who ponders the law of the Lord, the word of the Lord, day and night. He is like a tree that is planted by the river. And she was that tree planted by the cross that gave courage to her son, and your children need you to stand by their crosses. And she had the courage to stand by the river of Jesus's mercy pouring out of her heart because she kept the word. And we look to her as a model. But she's a model also because she's little. She knows her frailty, and evil has no power over a little heart because he just wants us to be puffed up, And there's this great homily of St. Augustine where he says you can't go through the narrow gate because you're puffed up with your pride and your head is swollen with pride, and you can't go through the narrow gate. And she can go through this narrow gate of love. I say narrow because the world thinks it's so narrow, but it's so broad. Jesus' love is so broad, but we have to embrace it in this narrow way. And because she is little, and in our own personal ways, paths of life, if we stay little, then evil has no power over us, and evil will not prevail. There's this beautiful poem of the little flowers, we call her in English. We don't say that in French, we call her little Thérèse. And maybe we could just have a class of French pronunciation. Her name is not Thérèse of Lisieux. For French ears, that sounds like the Native American tribe, the Sioux. And she was, yes, and so she's not from Lisieux, she's Thérèse of Lisieux. So can you say Dieu. Thérèse of Lisieux. Yes, thank you. Feels better. And a few months before she passed, she wrote this beautiful poem entitled "Why I Love You, Mary," to try and encompass all her love for the Virgin Mary, as she could feel her end drawing near, and she found so much support in her. Remember how she was healed by the smile of this statue when she was maybe 9 years old, or deeply suffering. And in French it might be better, but for your sake I'll say it in English. No. Oh, I love you, Mary, saying you are the servant of the God whom you charm by your humility. Oh, beloved mother, despite my littleness, like you I possess the all-powerful within me. Near you, Mary, I like to stay little. Auprès de toi, Marie, j'aime à rester petite. I see the vanity of greatness here below. Mother full of grace, I know that in Nazareth you live in poverty, wanting nothing more. The number of little ones on earth is truly great. They can raise their eyes to you without trembling. They can raise their eyes to you without trembling. How much do we want this in our relationships, that the other may trust in us and raise his eyes, her eyes to us, to me, without trembling. And this only if I stay little. And we experience this also as we go, begging, knocking on doors, or hitchhiking. And a few months ago, little sister Colette, RBC alumni, and little sister Stella Maurice, Spanish and French alumni, RBC. and I were hitchhiking to go to the soup kitchen. And we were also waiting for the bus, which is a homeless on wheels in Kansas City, a homeless shelter on wheels. But the bus was not coming, and so we were by the side of the road like this, and this car coming from another street saw us and pulled over abruptly in the middle of the street. The cars behind started honking, and we're, oh man, we're causing a whole commotion on the street, you know. And he pulled down his window, this man, and said, "Hey, do you need a ride?" "Yes, we do." And so he made a U-turn in the middle of the street and said, "Well, I can take you ladies, okay." And we just got in his car, and so I sat in the front because I'm just a little older, you know, to make sure everything goes well. And but we realized it was a little, can you say rundown car? Yes, and there was it's many things for smoking, different things, and I thought, oh man, maybe we should have thought twice. We're in a gangster's car, and I have a novice and not an old sister behind in the back. Okay, we have to. Okay, it's okay. It's just a 5-minute drive to the soup kitchen, a few blocks, and we'll be okay. Oh, you're beautiful, ladies. We are Catholic nuns, and we live right by the street. We have a monastery, and where are you going, ladies? Well, we sisters are going to the soup kitchen. Oh, okay. And then he tried to take a left, but it's been 2 years that you can't take a left on the little street because actually gangsters, I think, would just drive away through this little shortcut when there was a police, how do you call that? Chase. And but he seems to not be aware of that, and it's been a long time. And so I just, because he had said he was from the neighborhood, and I said, "Oh, you haven't noticed the change?" He said, "Oh no, I was on a vacation." Vacation, long-term prison. And we go every other week to the jail to have a Bible study with the women there. And oh, that's so good that you do that, ladies. Yes, we sisters like. And but do you know Jesus? Oh yeah, he's my savior. And may I ask you a question because you're so beautiful, ladies? And then in a very not diplomatic way, maybe, and a little offensive, you could say maybe, he asked if we if we had a vow of celibacy. And I'm thinking, okay, here we are. And I'm thinking, if maybe 15 years ago, well, I'm not old and it sounds a little, but when I was a young sister, I would, oh, how do you answer such a question? He was so rude, you know. And but I see there's this quote of Pope Francis in Evangelii Gaudium that helps me so much. Building communion amid disagreement can only be achieved by those great persons who are willing to go beyond the surface of the conflict. So often we're so superficial, and I speak of myself. Oh, this hurt me so badly, and how can she speak to me like that? And this, blah, blah, blah. And let's not speak of the little brothers. They're not here today, you know. And they just live down the block, down our monastery. But yes, who are willing to go beyond the surface of the conflict and to see others in their deepest dignity. We had there a man that was very wounded, who did not know maybe how much he's loved by Jesus and saved and in need of him. And so instead of being, oh, hurt, or that's not polite, sir, or just pull over, we're getting out of the car, I just asked him, well, obviously he's not living a vow of celibacy if he asks us a question. So do you have children? You know, we just reverse the question. And all of a sudden, we were at a deeper place in the conversation, and he said, yeah, I had a son, Nicholas. He died 2 years ago. And this man was young, so his name was Joachim. And we asked, how old was he? He was 22 years old. And so we asked, was he shot? Yes, he was. And then we had arrived to the soup kitchen by then. And we said, well, we'll pray for you and for his mom. His mom also passed away. And And so we said, God bless you. He tried again, oh, beautiful ladies. God only is beautiful, man. And, but all of a sudden, because we withdrew, we stepped back a little bit, all of a sudden, the grace was given to go in a deeper place where he was in truth with himself and with us. And so to go beyond the surface, beyond the words, but to see why, what is causing this distress in my brother's, attitude, in my sister's attitude, in my children, my wife, my husband. And this is only given by the Holy Spirit. And there's also this line of John Paul II, which I read not long ago in a meditation on givenness that he signed 6 days after his letters to families in 1994, but that was printed only after his death in 2006. But anyways, it's his theme, in many other documents. But he says, every man is unique. Uniqueness is not a limitation. My sister is so unique, and I could think, this is really a limitation, at least for me to love her. No, uniqueness is not a limitation. It is a window into the depths. A window into the depths, into the treasure and the incredible gift that the other can be for me. And there's this other story also that this was Saturday morning. We had a family visiting, a joyful and lively family of little sister Colette. And one of them plays the accordion. It was the last breakfast with them. And so the brothers have an accordion. And during breakfast, I thought, oh man, we really need the accordion. So I called the brothers. I escaped breakfast. I ran down the hill to get the brothers' accordion. And accordion, where is this one? Anyways, you know what instrument it is. And as I was going back, hurrying up, I saw this poor man in a wheelchair. So we live in this very humble part of town in Kansas City, downtown, and with many poor people and also very beautiful people. But among the poorest are those who, because of the abuse of drugs and alcohol, have lost some of their limbs. And there's quite a few around our monasteries. And so this man, his African American, was in his wheelchair right at the top of the hill, and his both legs stop after his knees, and he's often high on drug, and meth makes you completely crazy, even though then after you stop, you're just broken, very broken. And I have the accordion, I see this man, and all of a sudden, the wheel of feelings, I realize, oh, I'm anxious, I'm all by myself, if he needs help, or if he slides down towards me, and then man, look at you, you've been a sister for almost 20 years, and you're afraid. And I just had a few seconds to realize all this in my heart, and then to, come on, he can't hurt you, he has no legs, I can just run away. And this is so ridiculous. And it was given that I remember, but no, the poor one is always Christ. Christ made himself poor for us. Christ died on the cross for me, and he put on the face of the suffering servant that we may recognize him everywhere in the world. And the one who suffers is the one who is Christ to me. And so I was just praying in my heart, well, show me, Jesus, how you are in him. And I passed by him. He was smoking a cigar. And he looked a little, like this. And then he looked at me straight in the eyes and said, you are beautiful and I love you. And then he went back and I was just, Jesus, I just asked you, what are you going to tell me through this man? And you're saying those words, the most beautiful words that we each one of us here need to receive. You are beautiful and I love you. And this is what each one of your children needs to receive. And I was so afraid, and so I'm just telling you, we're not heroes. And Jesus in the poor man told me, you are beautiful and I love you. And this is what the world needs to hear. And one last story, may I? So we have a little sister who passed away last October. So we are a young community, only 50 years old, and we only have 2 sisters in heaven now. So our little sister Claire Monica, passed away last October in her mid-60s, and she came from a very, very, very poor North African family. Immigrants in the south of France. Her 3 siblings are all handicapped, and she grew up very poor with lacking the necessities of life and with no God, so in full atheism. And then when she was an adult, I think she was pretty involved with the communists. But then she met some Christians, some Catholics, and she realized that Christ had died and was risen just for her. And she was baptized as an adult, met our little sisters, and became a little sister. And coming from such a background, and she had a cleft lip, there was something that poverty was very obvious in her person, in the simplicity also of her person. But she had this immense gift of receiving the gospel purely, like the gospel was made for her, and you could see how much for me, when I joined, she was in my little community, and I was just transformed to see that Jesus is not calling, college professors also, but he's just calling each one of us to a greater gift of life. And she could make wonderful poems with beautiful rhymes about Jesus and the gospel, which were pretty hilarious. And she, yes, but then she developed a mental illness, and she could not do anything by herself, and all the trauma of her childhood came out very violently in her words. And there was the question at some point she had to go to a psychiatric facility. And how do we do? Because we don't have the means to take care of her properly. And our little sister Marie, our foundress, said, if we claim that we want to live with Jesus, who made himself poor for us, and we go out as beggars to the poorest, how dare we say that we don't want to keep the poorest of our sisters with us first? And this was very beautiful and courageous of her. And so our little sister spent the last 10, 15 years of her life with us in a special little community for her at our mother house. And she could yell out swear words during mass, very uncomfortable. Very good for acknowledging everything that you have in your heart, but she was this little lamb, and she had this one prayer that she would repeat every day: Jesus, grant us the gift to be faithful to the end. Jesus, grant us the gift to live together. And then, and again, this ray of light in her soul. And because of the mental disability, she lost the ability to swallow properly, and she died of a lung infection, very surprisingly, last October. And she was brought back from the ER to our monastery, and our sisters in Europe, we don't embalm bodies, and even less in religious communities. We don't put makeup, we just welcome death as it is. It is the reality of each one of us here. We're going to die and disappear to the eyes of the world, but we will be immersed in God's mercy forever. And so she was brought like a queen by the sisters in our chapel, and they put bouquets around her. We just followed live stream. We couldn't be there. And but little by little, there was a smile on her face that appeared, and peace that was shining forth. And when our little sister Marie, our foundress and our prioress, got back from Rome very quickly to be there for her funeral, when they got in the chapel with all the community gathered, they saw the smile on her face and on all the poverty that she had experienced throughout her life. And our little sister Marie said, this smile is the imprint of her encounter with the beloved that she had been yearning for her whole life. And the depth of her soul was appearing on her face. And all the poverty and the limitations experienced also from those surrounding her had disappeared, and the victory of God's peace and mercy was just being proclaimed on the face of her of her dead body. But as the brothers and sisters were coming back from different countries from Europe to honor our sister to the end, some of them experienced this extraordinary smell of flowers in the chapel. There was no incense, and the lilies could not fill the whole chapel like that. And the perfume did not cease until she was buried in the earth. And there was a peace radiating more and more from her body. And the sisters experiencing this divine grace of inner peace given to their hearts, not only like, oh, nice nunnery, and spiritual images, daughters of the little flower, not at all. This profound experience of God's presence in the midst of death and of the utmost poverty of the end of our life, and as a sign that God's holiness is given no matter our deeds or our achievements, that God's grace is greater than all that and is given through the consecration of our baptism and is a promise for us, for all mankind, but also for us unto eternity, that can give us today the strength to face the difficulty of daily life and of our own limitations when we forget that we ourselves can be a window into the depths for our brothers and sisters. And I will conclude with these words of Ferdinand Ulrich, this late German philosopher that some of you know. Who some say he was the greatest philosopher, a Catholic, of course, no, of the 20th century in Germany. And Scott Hahn said that it will take a whole century for the church to unfold the legacy of his work. And we got to meet him in the last 15 years of his life, and he was a friend and to our community and a teacher also, often through the phone. And he was a philosopher of the poverty of love. True love is poor because it does not grasp on the other and on anything. And that this poverty of love and the gratuity of love that he got to live himself in his own marriage when his wife asked for a separation after many, many years of marriage. And from that day on, he could not write anymore. He did not publish anything, I believe. After that, he could only answer questions from the place of utter poverty in his own life to live out to the end this gratuity of love towards his wife, and in being a servant of our God who is love to all. And he said during the first encounter with two little sisters who were hitchhiking, I think, through his city in Germany, poverty has the strength to awaken life in the other person. We are there, we are simply present, and we let things happen. Poverty has such strength. What is deepest in it is a way of withdrawing, of withholding oneself, which offers to the other person enough room to be, to live. The lamb is not a great horse. It is very humble, and it lets things be. It lets things happen. When love is at work, it hurts. And remember that he experienced it in his own marriage, in his own heart and life. When love is at work, it hurts because love leads us elsewhere and expands our hearts and invites us to gratuity. There is a word in the German language, umsonst, which means both in vain and gratuitous. May the Lord show you always, when you are living the umsonst as in vain, that there is still the umsonst of gratuity, the gratuity of love. And as our dear Pope Leo said on the day of his inaugural Mass, this is the hour for love.
And now we can take questions.
No, there's...
Okay.
Oh God, eternal Trinity, what more could you have given me than yourself? Good over every good, beautiful
I'm little sister Alel, and we'll start with a little intermission, a little comic relief with my favorite mission story of the moment, okay?
Yeah.
So the sisters, I've only heard it about 10 times. So as Marie-Jeanne said, we're mendicants, we're beggars. So we really go out when we can, knocking on doors, asking for something to eat for our lunch. Or we get in line in the soup kitchen to eat with the poor there. So it's Divine Mercy Sunday, so the Sunday after Easter. And I'm with a sister who was just visiting just for the Easter time for Holy Week. She's from France, lives in France, but was coming just for that time, and with a young woman who's living with us right now. So we're going to go out begging, knocking on doors, and she says, I really want to go to a poor neighborhood. So the woman who dropping us off said, because we asked her for a ride after Mass, said, you already are in a poor neighborhood. So I said, okay. So I had a little idea, so I said, let's go over there. So we went there, and this couple dropped us off in a trailer park, not far from where we live. So we started knocking on doors of these trailers. We didn't receive much. A little here, I think an apple, and then I don't remember what else. Not much. And then we saw the smallest little trailer there was actually a camper. We saw a camper with a truck parked outside. So I thought, well, at least there's a truck. Maybe someone's inside and is going to answer. So we knock on the door, and this young woman comes out. So we ask for something to eat. She said, I don't have anything ready. Can you just wait a second? Sure, yeah. So we sit down on a chair outside on a curb. We're just sitting there. A little while later, she comes out with her keys in her hand. And she says, okay, I'm going to go buy you guys something to eat. What do you want? Which is the worst question to ask a beggar. Because what do you say? Oh, whatever, haha, we like everything. And she says, no, I really want to, I don't want to get something you don't like. No, we like everything. We eat everything. But no, what do you want? Anything. So she said, do you want to come with me? We said, sure. So we get in her car. So we meet her. So she's lived in Kansas City for about 2 years now. She's from California. She's just finishing pipe fitting school. And her mom is from the Philippines. So she says, I'm half Catholic, half Southern Baptist, Okay. So she just recently bought her camper. And before that was actually living in her car. She lived in her car for about a year. And so she had many different experiences. And when she heard that we were hitchhiking, she kept on saying to us, that is so dangerous. You cannot do that. We said, you lived in your car. I know, but you cannot hitchhike. That is so dangerous. So anyway, she brings us to Chipotle. So we're ordering our little burritos, okay, we're talking. And then as we're checking out, she says, but do you want anything to drink? And so being, once again, good little sisters, we said, oh no, water's fine. But actually, I had been craving a Coke since Easter. I'd ask the sisters, we got no brothers, nobody, no Coke to be found in the village of the Lamb. And so I told her, actually, I would love a Coke. And she said, oh, great, let me get you a Coke. So she got a Coke, and it's one of those nice ones in the glass bottle, Ooh, yeah. So she grabs us that, and so we get back in her car, we talk. I don't know, for some reason we started talking about the gospel of the day of when it says, peace be with you. So she says, oh, is that why the priest in Mass says, like, peace be with you? I'm like, yeah. And so we bring her into the chapel. She brings us back to the monastery. She didn't want us to hitchhike home, of course. And she's just in there and just awestruck. We bring her to the little we have in our chapel right now, kind of the empty tomb. We open up the altar, we put a stone inside, we anoint it with good smelling oils, and we have the empty tomb. So she comes and kneels down, and she said, you guys are so lucky that you get to live here. And then, so we leave. She asked what time Mass was. We haven't seen her yet, but who knows? And then she leaves saying, peace be with you. So she leaves. We still have all our food. We haven't eaten anything. So we think, well, either we can stay here in the monastery or we can be missionaries and go out and eat at Lally Park. So Lally Park is, I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, downtown KCK, but Lally Park is 10th and Central, and it's actually a glorified median. So there's grass and a bench and a little sculpture of a bicycle, okay? But always people there, it's hopping. And it closes, oh yes, there's a little sign next to it saying it closes at 10:30. So if you're thinking about going, make sure you go early. So we go, we sit down, very piously, we bless our meal. But already as while we were walking there, I was thinking to myself, I think that Coke is in a glass bottle with like a real cap on it, I was like, I wonder how I'm gonna open that. oh, well, figured out I'll ask somebody, that's what we do for a living, ask people. So we sit down, we take it, we blessed our meal. I have my Coke in my hand, but I haven't even, because I had thought maybe I'll take my keys and try to open it, So I haven't done anything yet, I'm just holding it. And all of a sudden we look up and there's this young man running towards us. And he says to me, do you need me to open that for you? Yes. So I hand him my Coke. He takes the back of his lighter. He opens, takes off the cap, hands it back to me, flicks the cap up in the air so you hear it hitting the ground, runs away, gets into his car that was stopped at the red light, which has now turned green, and drives away. And I was like, oh my goodness. God really wanted me to drink this Coke. And this young man, he was Hispanic. I don't know his name, but I'm pretty sure it was Jesus. God himself sent his son to open my Coke bottle. So praise the Lord. I now have this Coke bottle in my cell with a little flower in it because it just tells me how much Jesus loves me. Okay, so, hi. So, yes, today. So, I really wanted to share with you, I don't know when I was thinking about this all, I read many different things. I read a lot of Pope Francis. I love Pope Francis. Love Pope Leo. Pope Francis too, but I was reading the retreat that Pope Francis gave to the priests during the Year of Mercy. And at one point he spoke about how within us, there's like this great tension within us, because within us, he actually called it, I didn't look at what he said in Italian, but in English they translated it as an embarrassed dignity. So it's like within us, we have our most shameful misery and our highest dignity live side by side within us. So within us, we have all the things we've heard, right? All our pride, our resentment, our judgments, our indifferences, all these wounds that we have, and then all these things that come from these wounds. But yet we are still these beloved sons and daughters of the Father, and that we were bought at this great price. And how often we either fall into one side or other, and often we just actually try to hide that one side by putting on this facade, this Pharisee, as Marie-Jeanne said, right? We just try to hide it, that this great misery doesn't exist. But actually what the Lord wants us to do is to have both, to live in this beautiful harmony of both. Pope Francis will go on to say that it's not that God comes and just paints over this misery, but he intertwines with it, where he what's past tense?
Weaves.
Thanks. Weaves. Good job. Weaves in it. He weaves in there, and he makes something new. So that's what he wants to do with his mercy that comes and covers it all. But it's like this grace, we need to ask this grace from God to live in this tension between this shameful misery and our greatest dignity. And the only thing that makes this possible is mercy, God's mercy, accepting his mercy so that we can be instruments of his mercy. So the question is, but how can we make this tension within us fruitful and to be a source of life? So I think really when I was praying with this, I thought each one of us need to let go of our desire for power. So within us, this desire of power to dominate others. We heard this, right? To control others, to control even my own life, to control my spiritual life. I'm in control. To control my kids, my husband, my wife, my sisters, the brothers. If only we could. And how do we do this? By putting others down, by pointing out their shortcomings, by gossip. How terrible a thing is gossip. Pope Francis spoke very strongly against gossip and how easily it comes out of our mouth. We're just sharing something. Well, actually, no, we're not. We're actually bringing down the other to place ourselves above them. So we can even have this domination in us, even by our perfectionism, by making everything be perfect, not leaving any space for the others, for God, or even for myself, my real self, by disqualifying others, by this need in us to always be right. So yes, this facade of a Pharisee, this Pharisee that I have in me, where I have it all together, right? Everything's fine, I got it together, where I'm in control, and where I can very gladly help others, but I don't need help. I can help you, but I don't need help. And actually, this is also Pope Francis who said this, but he said, living in this, where we have everything, we're okay, we're holding it together, this Pharisee on the outside that has it all together, actually makes lose our relationship. Our relationship with God, because we don't need him, because we got it under control. Our relationship with others, because same thing, we're okay. I can help you, but I don't need it. And then even with ourselves, because actually we don't know ourselves. Actually, that's not who we are. We're not living this beautiful tension between these two, of this shameful misery and this beautiful dignity. We're just trying to live this fake life that I created for myself. So we lose all these relationships in our life. And when I was praying about this, but how do we find these relationships again? I really found that, when we let it all fall and we go deeper, we find something in us. And when God, in the beginning in the book of Genesis, right, when he creates man, what does he say? Let us create man in our own image. And this is what I think, I don't know, I say this very often, but it's this great gift we have also as beggars, is to find this image of God in everyone we meet. This image of God, which is the image of the Trinity itself, in which we are created. God says, no, right? Let us make man in our own image. God doesn't say, let us make man in my image. He says in our image. It's this image of the Trinity itself. And what is the Trinity? If you look at it, if you think about I didn't bring my icon with me. I brought it a couple years ago, I think. But the icon of the Trinity, what is it? It's these three persons, but who are always in relationship one with the other. One doesn't exist without the other. They are one, but they're three. I just think about all these gospels we've been having in John, but we see this all the time. Jesus was saying, but these words are not mine, but the Father's. And then he says, the Father will send you the Holy Spirit. I see Jesus, he doesn't take things for himself. He doesn't try to grasp it. This is mine. But he receives everything and he gives everything. And this is the relationship of the Trinity. They're constantly receiving from the others, even their very being. They receive it from another, but they're ready to give it. And this is the image in which we are created, this image of relationship. Not to be these little islands all one next to another, but to really be this communion, this circulation of love, of relationship. And that's what we are created in. So to overcome this spirit of domination, of power that we have, this desire to have everything under control, to have this perfect image of myself that I give to the world, is first of all to find within us this desire for relationship. That's what each one of us are created. That's what each one of us desire, this desire for love that we each have, to be known, to be acknowledged. It's just that, it's this desire to be in a relationship with another. First of all, of course, with God, but then with also our husband, our wife, or with our sister. To be loved, to be in relationship, to be able even to give of ourselves. How much more fulfillment we find in giving of ourselves than of just taking from the other, because in the end, we're always empty, because we take, but it doesn't fill us. But to give of ourselves. And then really too, when we go deeper and we find this image of the Trinity in us, we found that, yes, so God is relationship, but God is also a beggar. So I know we're a beggar, so we're going to say that we're beggars, but it's true. God is a beggar. God never forces himself on anyone. He only offers. It's like Jesus, he got down. What did he do at the Last Supper? He got down and he washed his disciples' feet. He didn't force his love on them, but he offers his love. Even on the cross, He didn't force his love on anybody. He offered it. He gave it freely. He got up on the cross to die for us, knowing that in the end, we could accept or reject his love. And every day it's the same. He knows that today I can accept his love or reject his love, but he's still going to give it to me. He's still going to offer. He's not going to take it back knowing that there's this possibility of rejection. God is a beggar. God's weak. No, God died. Jesus was thirsty. Even the Holy Spirit, he needs to be sent by someone. The Son is sent. It's like this weakness. They're not self-sufficient. God is not self-sufficient. Even St. Catherine of Siena, whom Marie-Jeanne spoke about, she says that God is like, he creates us in such a way and he loves us in such a way that it is as if he couldn't live without us. Like, this is God's crazy love. It's as if he couldn't live without us. That's God's love. This is God's weakness. And so, also what I'm saying now actually comes, a couple months ago, we had the gift of having Bishop Johnston come and celebrate Mass, and he gave this beautiful homily. The gospel of the day was maybe knock and it will be open to you, something like this. But he said, God loves it when we beg. He loves it. Why? Because he sees his own image. He sees himself in us. And so, Angie, you shared, right? You prayed, and half an hour later, your prayer, but you begged from God. And he answered. That's what he loves. He's waiting for this, but he's waiting because he wants to be in relationship with us. He wants us to ask, to open up our hearts to him in these little ways. So that's why he loves. He wants to, not that we're going to be self-sufficient. He wants us to need him, like each one of us, how much each one of us wants to be needed. But God's the same way. He wants this. But then Bishop Johnston, he also went on to say that also this act of begging, so God, is actually twofold. So God wants us to beg for that because he sees his own image in us and he loves that. He wants to be there for us. But that when we really physically ask another human being for something, actually we allow this other person to become a cooperator with God, with the Father. Because what does Jesus say? What do we hear in the gospel? He says, my Father will give you all things. Or he says, so your heavenly Father will give you whatever you ask, or I don't know, whatever you need. And so when we ask someone, when we as little sisters go knocking on a door, asking for something, and someone gives us an apple, actually they become one with the Father. This act is the Father, our Heavenly Father wanted us to give this apple, and he used this person to do it. But it's true in your relationships too, when you ask your husband or your wife to help you in a situation, to help you talk through something, anything. It can be something very simple. But we allow them to become cooperators with God. And Bishop Johnston said, it's when we ask, a seed germinates. Something happens that wouldn't have happened otherwise. So God wants us to turn to each other so that we can provide opportunities for a seed to germinate and for charity to be born that otherwise would not be born. How much God is waiting for these circumstances to happen so that he can be a part of it. So it's also just to find this, Pope Francis says, it's not a way of life, but it's the way of life. This way of life of becoming beggars ourselves, of needing one another, of needing God, of needing the one who's sitting next to me, of no longer living in this lie that our culture has told us that we need to be self-sufficient, that we don't need anyone, that we need to have everything under control. Actually, we don't. And praise the Lord when we don't. Then that way God himself can really work. So really this to become these beggars of God, of one another. And this allows us to also realize our true being. Who are we? We're these people that need to be in relationship, that need each other, that we're needy. How beautiful that we're needy. I know that doesn't always sound very great to be needy, but actually it's a wonderful gift to need someone else. And we should really praise the Lord for it, give thanks for it. And with this, once we realize this this part of us, this littleness in ourselves, we can let go of this desire for power. We can let down all these arms that we were holding up, all these facades that we had, and we can have peace and calm. And this is where this tension between my shameful misery and my greatest dignity can really be at peace. It's like this great calm sea that we can be on, where we could be able to live both. Yes, I have this great misery, or I'm poor, or I'm wounded. But in that, I am still this beloved daughter and son and daughter of the Father, and I don't need to hide this misery, because actually, this is what shows this greater glory of God, that I am this little one, this poor one, that I can't figure it out on my own, that I can't do it by myself. This gives greater glory to God than if I had it all together, because then I don't need God. And then I just really I want to share with you this beautiful prayer by the Patriarch Athenagoras. I don't know how to say it, the first. But it's this prayer, the title is, I'm no longer afraid of anything. And it's really about this. It's about being at peace with oneself, with who we really are, with our littleness. And when we find this, when we're able to accept who we are, we no longer have to be on the defensive and be trying to protect something that isn't even real, an image of ourselves that doesn't exist. But when we're really at peace with ourselves, and meaning at peace with this shameful misery, which is a reality of who we are, because God doesn't just paint over it and act like it doesn't exist, but he makes something new out of it, something beautiful. When we do this, then we can really be at peace and all fear is gone. So this is his prayer. The hardest war is the war against oneself. One must disarm. I waged this war for years. It was terrible. But now I am disarmed. I am no longer afraid of anything because love banishes fear. I am disarmed of the need to be right, to justify myself by disqualifying others. I am no longer on the defensive, jealously clutching my wealth. I accept and share. I do not particularly hold on to my ideas, my projects. If somebody suggests better ones, no, I should say good ones, not better ones, I accept without regrets. I have renounced comparisons. What is good, true, real, is always for me the best, and that is why I am not afraid anymore. When we have left everything, we have no fear anymore. When we are disarmed and dispossessed of self, if we open our hearts to the God-man who makes all things new, then he takes away past hurts and makes for us a new time where everything is possible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have time for questions.
Can you just give us the author of the poem?
So it's Patriarch Athenagoras the first.
I have a question. Can you describe how you got here?
Today,
Yeah. You talk a lot about hitchhiking to get places. How did you get here?
well, we took our van,
You did take
but someone gave us that van.
Okay.
No, frankly, in the United States right now, we don't have permission to hitchhike outside of the greater Kansas City area. Well, the brothers do, so if you see the brothers, please pick them up. The sisters, you'll see us in our van. Yes?
So I'm an academic, there's a lot of academics in this room, and I love the thought of littleness, and I love the idea of, woundedness as sort of way for students. Do you have any advice, thoughts, comments about how to transition from being enamored by the ideas of mercy and the ideas of making one's woundedness the heart of one's relationship and the way one relates to people, kind of transitioning to that as a way of living, that it's not an idea for you.
So I think it's already, for all of you in this room, it's hopefully not just an idea because you live in family life, where you confront the shortcomings, the misery, also the great dignity of each one every day. So that's how it's also becomes a reality for us, is that we live together. So it's not just some pretty idea that you have, but it's actually reality, because every day my sister can annoy me and I can annoy her right back. But we still choose to love and to live together. I don't know, you have something to say on this matter, Mahijan?
I think we were enamored with the idea of spiritual life when we joined the community, and then we realized that maybe just the first week we got hurt, and some people were annoyed at us. And I think it's this chapter of forgiveness, this active intention of acknowledging our limitations and asking for forgiveness and receiving the forgiveness of others, that just shapes, not even shapes, but takes off the costumes, that we put on to be more beautiful, but just that actually my sisters are the mirror of my shortcomings. It's very uncomfortable, especially at the beginning, but it's the way to truth and to reality, and that's the only place where I can encounter Christ. And we have one of our young adults, Kimberly. She lived among us for some months because she needed a place to stay, and she saw how often after dinner, after the dishes, we would just go in a different room and ask forgiveness to one another, and she could see maybe the joy then coming out of that room. I don't know, but she witnessed it every day, and she was so touched by it that now she moved in with her mom it's a difficult relationship, a very wounded family, and her younger sister. And for Lent, she decided to implement that in her own family. And on Tuesday night for Lent, they would go to adoration together and first pray to Jesus, and then also think of the shortcomings and the graces of the week and share it very vulnerably together. It's not a model for everybody, it's just an example. And to say, well, I was wounded in that situation and I felt very loved in that situation, without commenting, without arguing. When we have our chapter of forgiveness, I don't say, yeah, good thing you said that, because by the way, you also forgot that, and no, I just receive, and this forms Christ in our hearts, I think.
Yeah, I have a question. I hear you're expanding to another city. Can you tell us what that looks like?
So 2 years ago, we arrived in America. The community was founded in America 17 years ago at the invitation of our dear Archbishop Naumann, who asked to retire among us now that he's retired. And last week we got the building permit for his little house on the brother's property. But so it will be still some months before his house is ready. He met our community in Rome and was attracted to the charism and asked for a foundation in his archdiocese. So that's how we arrived here. And 2 years ago, we received an invitation letter from Bishop Johnston to start a little mission in St. Joseph, Missouri, so very close to here. And there's not enough sisters to start a permanent community there, but we sent 3 sisters for 1 week a month in a rectory that we've adapted to our style, the Lamb style, as we call it. Yes.
Do you want to hear a mission story from St. Joe? So Maurice, you're up. Come on. Ooh, your own mic.
I just came for moral support. I can share the briefly, because two other sisters who aren't here today and I, we spent a week in St. Joseph a couple weeks ago. And so for Sunday, we went to Mass, and some parishioners gave us a ride because we can't hitchhike in St. Joseph. So we went to the south side of St. Joe, close to St. James. Many of you are familiar. And so we just knocked on a couple doors, and there was a man mowing his lawn, and so kind of waved at him. He came up and he gave us some apples, and then he said, well, actually, if you come back in like 30 minutes or an hour, I'll finish mowing my lawn, and then I can make you guys a sandwich. And so we're like, oh, sure, okay. So then we walked to St. James to greet the crowd that was getting out of Mass, and then we had just enough time to come back. It was perfect. And he was there waiting. He already had the sandwiches made, and but he really lives by himself and hasn't been to church in 10 years, but he grew up Catholic. So he's like interested to know that there was a church close by. I'm like, yeah, you walk 3 blocks and then turn left, you walk 2. And my sister had gotten a bulletin from the church, so she gave it to him. But he like received it enthusiastically. But he's just a very, I don't know, he has a lot of questions, but is very reserved. So I don't know, it was touching that we could spend this time with him. And he said, my neighbors probably think I'm weird that you're here, that I have you here on my front porch, but for me it's a sign that you came today. And so his name is John. I pray for him. So then we left after praying with him and said, well, let's go back home, but it was 2 hours walking, maybe more. So we started walking across St. Joe. We met some people in the downtown. And there was a man who had dumped, because there's only one soup kitchen in St. Joe, so it's pretty easy to start to get to know the people there, and he's on the streets, and so it's like a small town. And so there was a man who had a backpack full, and he's like, wait, I need to show you something. He like dumps everything out of his backpack. I don't know, it was like a Mary Poppins bag, like impossible in there. And then at the bottom, he's like, here, I found this in the dumpster, and it was miraculous medal. And then like with also 2 medals of roses on the chain, and then on the back some saints. And so he's like, what do the hearts mean? What do the hearts mean? Like one is pierced through, and one has like a crown of thorns, Jesus' heart, Mary's heart. He was very touched by that. He put it on right away. And we had also entrusted this mission this whole week to the Virgin Mary, because it was the month of May too. And so she's very present. And then we continued on our way. Didn't plan on going to the Pony Express Museum, but ended up there. And the man who was working at the front said, all right, 3 adults. And we were like, no, actually, we're just, looking at the lobby. So we were chatting with him, and then he's like, well, it'll be closed in an hour, so just go in. So we ended up going to the Pony Express Museum, and yeah. And so then we were like, well, okay, that was a nice tour, but we have to keep going home. So we kept walking. And then it was about 4:30 by the time we were getting close to the rectory, the house where we stay. And so I think we were all thinking, what are we going to do now? Because, almost dinner. Are we just going to go out again on mission? We were tired. What are we going to eat? Because he had given us a sandwich, but it was like, I don't know.
Long time ago.
It was a long time ago, yeah.
You walked away.
And so, so we were walking up the hill, like 2 minutes from the house, and then we see a man on one side of the street that had like a black cape and hood on, and tattoos and a bunch of chains, and he was talking, but sometimes you're like, people are talking, but not to you. and so we're not going to provoke anything, at least that's what I thought, so I just like didn't even look at him, and I just walked on the other side. And then we kept going, but then he was also walking up the same hill, so we crossed paths, and he's like, what you doing? Like, telling people about Jesus? And another sister said, well, looking for something to eat. And he's like, what? And he said, we're Catholic nuns. And he's like, the nuns are hungry? And he just started like freaking out. And he's like, follow me, follow me. And I think we all were like, shh. We didn't say anything to each other. We're like, should we follow him? But like all mutually did, but not communicating. And we were like, well, we can't stop him. So we like followed him down the street. And he was knocking on some houses that we never would have dared to knock on. Because these are like 3 houses on the corner that we see people coming in and out of all the time. But, well, it's just not very stable environment. And he was knocking on these houses. He's like, I know they have 3 donuts in here. So he like, 3 donuts, and he's like, here you go, 3 donuts. And this guy just made a tuna casserole, and he ran to the other house. He's like begging for us, and he's like, this is the. And they were like, we have a Tupperware if that helps, and he's like, oh, don't worry, we got Tupperware. And then all of a sudden, through the door, which isn't really a door, but it's like kind of a window there. And so like a huge Tupperware comes out with full of the tuna casserole, and then some of his friends and buddies came out of the house too, and all of a sudden, all these people that we never get to see were just coming out of their homes, like we didn't even know that they lived in this neighborhood. Well, they don't. I don't know. They don't really live there, but they do. And so, but they're all coming out. Hi, who are you? You know. And then, but the 2 guys who were in that house, one is the cook, and so he just cooks for them every day, but he never knows how many people are going to show up. But he's the cook. And he can't really see very well either, so we were like, maybe he's standoffish, but actually he just couldn't see us, so we came closer to him. And then there was another guy too, who had a wound on his hand, like an open wound, and he looked like he wasn't doing well. And then there was our friend with the black cape. And we were like, thank you so much, and the cook, Chad, said, I put in some bread and some butter for you. So, oh, wait. Hold on. And he went back and he's like, this is for dessert. And he got a can of fruit for us. Super thoughtful. And we were just extremely touched because we were like we never thought we would be able to even meet these people in this house. And we said, can we sing you a blessing? And then again, Chad said, wait. And he went back in. He came back with a rosary that was as big as our rosary. But it was beautiful white beads. And he was holding it like it was his greatest treasure. And he said, this is so that I can pray for my son who died 3 years ago. And so there was like a moment of silence also with the other 2 men there, like this very reverent moment. And so, yeah, we sang them the blessing. One little sister gave them all miraculous medals. She in her pocket is always full of them. But it was touching because they each received that with a lot of reverence. And the one who had all the chains with the black cape, he's like, oh, okay, great, thank you. And he's like, I already have St. Benedict for exorcisms and St. Michael. And so then he added the Virgin Mary. And we're like, but then we noticed there was a statue of the Virgin Mary in their yard. And we're like, do you know you have the Virgin Mary here? Yeah, we're going to make her a shrine. And we're like, okay. And then at the end, Chad said, wait, don't leave. And he brought out his dog. The dog could sniff us. So that when we came back to visit the shrine, the dog wouldn't have any problems with it. And so we were, wow. And so over the next few days, we were like, have they made the shrine yet? No, okay. And so we kept waiting for the shrine. And then we were like, well, let's bring the Tupperware back. And so each time we came back to bring the Tupperware, we asked, can we move Our Lady to make a shrine? And they were like, sure, sure. So then we put her next to a tree in a nicer spot in their yard, a few stones around. And then the last day before we left, this is the last thing we did before we left St. Joseph. It was Mother's Day the next day, so we brought some flowers that we had in our chapel. And Chad was there, the cook, and he's like, I'm not cooking. Okay. And he like was there as we said Happy Mother's Day to Mary, gave the flowers to her, and he also said Happy Mother's Day, Mary, and he's like, you come back whenever you want. Thank you for coming. And so it was a beautiful. There's a shrine in St. Joseph now, if you want to visit, but it's beautiful because the Virgin Mary is really there, and yeah, she's really with the poor.
We have one more quick question. Somebody's got one.
I have one.
Okay.
So, people knocking on your door.
people always knocking on your door and, you know, like, oh, it's been interrupted to the day. But you always receive them so joyfully. In my own home, I see this lack whenever people knock on my door. And I really like being here now. I think, like, and I've had this desire, like, I want to receive them as Christ. I want them to feel comfortable in my home. I want them to know that they're loved. All these people, but it seems to always be at the wrong time that people knock, and I'm like, okay, you know, hi, bye, you know, whatever. So I was wondering, how in the moment, in this hurtiness, we have this awareness of the other as Christ, and especially in welcoming people.
I think it's in failing so often that I realized that I couldn't make it. Sometimes you get caught in things to do, and there's all your children to take care of, and I see for myself it was to acknowledge how I fail, and why do I fail? It's because I control and I expect so much, maybe of me, and because I don't let Jesus. I just don't really rely on him. And I say this as a begging sister, you know, but maybe that's why he made us join this community, is to force us into letting go so often when we go begging. But I say that in failing, we realize that we can't control, we let go, and then Jesus can act in our hearts. And I often think of our Benedictine monks. They might have gone to their office and mass, who really have in their rule that the one knocking on the door, Saint Benedict's rule, is Christ himself. And but also there's this, our co-founder, Brother Jean-Claude, is a Franciscan brother. He's 93 now, but he lived for 11 years on the street with the poorest as a friar after 30 years of being a religious. And he would ask every year, and he would be answered, "It is very Franciscan, but we need you elsewhere." Until one day they said, "Well, you could be freed for that mission to go live on the street." And he said, "That's when I started to be afraid of this call." And but often he says, "How can we make time for others or for the poor?" And well, here in America, you're controlling even. I'm sorry to say, but with your car, you control your life even more than in Europe. When we walk and we bump into people more often, and so it's just a different context. But he would say, if you want to have time for the poor, make sure you leave early to have time for the others. And I think it's the same to, well, we're always late, you know, when there are so many things to do, but to have this in mind, Lord, give me a heart that is willing to be bothered and to, I don't know, to receive the other.
I think also it's always important to realize that we don't have to, like, I don't know how to say it, but our feelings, we don't have to think that how we're feeling decides how the situation is going to be. Like, so how often we let our feelings dictate things, as if that's what decides. But just to do things even if we're not feeling like it. And welcome this person even if I'm not. And our co-founder, Jean-Claude, said something in French which is very nice. In English, it's less nice. But it's like, you do the act, you do this thing, and the Lord will do the rest. And also not to put such a pressure on ourselves that we have to be perfect, or that even that I have to feel like this. I have to feel happy when someone knocks on my door. No, I can actually kind of be annoyed, but still I can still open up the door. I don't have to show it. It's, yes, to not let our feelings dictate everything in our lives. To live, because there's emotions, and then we can live up here above our emotions.
Okay, two quick things that I want to say. The first is, little sister Mary John, little sister Lowell, thank you. The second is, little sister Mary John, in my class, you said this thing, I've quoted this back to you lots of times, but you said that each person has in their heart a Bethlehem, and that Bethlehem is the darkest most pitiful place that we're most ashamed of. It's the place that we try to hide from all other people, and oftentimes we hide from ourselves that we're afraid to look at. But that's the Bethlehem that Jesus is waiting to enter into. And I think that what we learned this morning from Kevin and Angie and your little sister Al and little sister Mary Jeanne is about the power of that vulnerability, the power of that failure, the power of that neediness, the power of learning how to beg and look towards another. It makes me think of a quotation from Father Giussani that I mean, always share with. Father Giussani says that the true protagonist of history is the beggar, man who begs for Christ, and Christ who begs for man's heart. Okay? So I'm just so grateful for these two amazing witnesses. Sack lunches are ready. You go and you pick them up. You get into go take your car if you want to. Or I've also got about 10 more spaces in my van that you can get into or get into other people's vans. And we'll go and we'll drive to where the hike is. Got some flyers here with directions to the hike. So that's the next thing. Before you get up, the very last thing is this. The little sisters will sing us the blessing.
Yeah.